I am so happy to meet you all once again. And today, as Father Justice has explained, we will be dealing with participatory learning and action. And that is also called participatory learning activities, activities through participation and learning process. Yeah, now there are so many things which has to be taught to children. And one of the important thing is this PLA techniques, these PLA tools. Now, when children are taught by doing it and doing it as a group, it is a wonderful way that they learn things, fantastically. The same method also can be used in the schools for teaching various subjects. Let it be language, or let it be civic studies or social studies or maths or theorems or physics or science, any subject. If it is prepared in a way that a group, smaller groups are formed in the school and the classes, and they are converted into activities, so that becomes, that learning becomes a group activity. It's a wonderful tool actually. And it's a wonderful tool which will bring a very positive, very good result. And in Children's Parliament, there are certain activities to be done by this process, this method. First, what we say is that the children have to be taught doing mapping. There are a number of mappings which has to be done. And the children also have to be taught preparing graphs and diagrams. So there are the three activities, very, very interesting. One is mapping, then preparing diagrams and preparing graphs. And if they do it in a group, oh, fantastic it is. And it teaches not only these particular aspects in this, they can apply these methods for any other learning process, even in the schools in their academical area. So it is very, very interesting. So when we come to the mapping, there are a number of mappings which we propose for the children, and especially the village level. So the first one is a geographical mapping. So the children are taught to make a geographical mapping of that village. It could be even for the neighborhood. So the neighborhood can prepare a geographical mapping of that particular neighborhood. The roads, the lanes, the houses, and anything connected with it. It's only an outline of the geographical part of it. Then we have the social mapping, which relates to everything whichever is available that in that particular neighborhood or in the village. All the houses and the roads and the lampposts, that and this, whatever is there as it is. And this is called a social mapping. And when the children are taught to do that, you will see, I have directly taught some of the children parliaments doing this. And the way they come up, the way they respond to that, so happy, very happy. They are very happy to work in groups. And they learn fast. And they learn very deep also. Then we have the infrastructural mapping. So what are the infrastructures there in the village? It may be a school, it may be a temple, it may be a place of worship, or it may be a pond, or whatever it is. All in general, all the infrastructures, or the water tank, the water line, or the taps in various places, and the dumping yard or dumping place in the village, or whatever it is, these all infrastructures. So this infrastructural mapping, like including this health centers and all that, whichever is there. So this has to be specifically added with that topic. the infrastructures available and the place where they are located. It is mapping. Then we have seasonal mapping. This mapping is more or less like data and graphics and diagrams. All these methods can be used in the seasonal mapping. So there are various seasons, and in each season there are certain specialities of that particular season. For example, there are certain seasons where there are certain celebrations, common celebrations in the village, like certain festivals, and they are all connected with the season. For example, in Tamil Nadu, we celebrate Pongal, that is connected with the harvesting season. So we have Onam in Kerala, that is connected with that particular season. So many things are connected. So then the seasonal mapping has to be prepared such a way, because they are connected with various other problems. Like we have a certain sickness, and they come only in that particular season, seasonal sickness. On the summer season, you have a particular type of sickness, which affect the villages. And on the winter season, there is another particular type of sickness, viral infections happening. So that also can be connected with, though there is a separate mapping for all those things, but they are all connected with the seasonal mapping. And even the income, so it has got a different mapping altogether, but that can be linked with the seasonal mapping. Then we have the income mapping. This is again graphs. This mapping is connected with the diagram and graphs. Income for each family. What are the type of incomes they have. And some may be season based, because there will be some menial workers or some workers in a particular trade. So that is all connected with the season. Like for example, a carpenter or a mason. So they will have a less income in the winter season, because then they may not be more employed at that time. There will be less work for them. So for each season, it is connected with the seasonal mapping also. So this income, some have permanent income, some have temporary income, some have fluctuating income according to the season, and all that. So this has to be also can be prepared by the children. So the children learn a lot of things through this. Not only that mapping and the information they get, the way they do the things, they learn the method such a way that they can apply this for anything else also. And when they learn all these things, and they become part of those things which they learn, and those things, whatever is learned by them through these things, becomes part of them. So they become very much interconnected with all the issues around the village. Then we have occupational mapping. In this occupational mapping, we have, there are so many things connected with that. For example, in the villages, most of them may be, a type of agricultural families with owning lands, some of them owning lands, and some of them may be just agricultural laborers without having landless laborers. And some may be having some other type of occupation. Some may be having some petty shops here and there or whatever it is. Or some may be domestic workers, some may be, menial workers, or some may be the skilled workers like a mason, carpenter, and electrician, and all these type of things. So the occupational mapping is prepared such a way that the children parliament becomes aware of the occupations available in that area and their income, and it gives them a lot of insight to the children. And when they grow up, they can choose of various occupations what they have. And there are so many things. So many occupations. And this will help the children to realize what is employment and what is self-employment and all that. And some may be preparing, some producing their own pickles and puppets at the local level, that and this, and selling it at the local level. This all, gives the insight to the children how income can be generated through various occupations and all that. Then we have literacy mapping. We have to have a literacy map. See, many of these mappings are connected with various departments of the ministries. And they can have a committee formed, a group formed to prepare the mapping separately in that group. So this is with education ministry, literacy mapping. So we have already datas, and I will come to the datas later. Datas of the people, adults, elders, and the youth and children, and gender-wise and all that. And how many are literate, and what is the level of their literacy, how many were dropouts, and all that. See, anything connected with the literacy. So this mapping is another wonderful mapping which gives a very big insight to the children about the status of the literacy in the village or neighborhood. Then we have resource mapping. Every neighborhood or every village has its own resource. It could be natural resources, or it could be resources like mines, and there are so many things, and forest resources and things like that. So the children prepare this resource mapping, whichever is available, because now we are talking about resource-based economy, the global level. So when the children are taught to identify the resources in their village, they will be able to connect how to convert that resources into their own economy. This all is very much linked. So that's why we have a step-by-step program of preparing these mappings, so that the children learn all this. This cannot be taught. A map cannot be prepared by the animator and say this, you have this. No. Instead of that, let the children themselves come into groups and prepare their own mappings. There may be some lacking here and there. They may miss the point or whatever it is, but that can be again corrected later. But when they do it themselves, and the learning part is very high. It has a very high impact in the learning process. Then we have health mapping. When we talk about health, there is chronic illness, then infected illness, then contagious sickness, non-contagious sickness, and all that. There are various type of sicknesses, health problems, then physical problems, and mental sickness, mental health issues, then emotional health issues. There are so many things, varieties. So these children learn how to identify the various type of sickness and put them into separate segments, and learn the process of being having a good well-being of the community, for themselves, for the children, and for the community. And when they prepare this health mapping, they also take the data, the causes for this health issues, internal or external, and other reasons for people getting sick. And here, it comes, when people are affected by the industries, pollutions, this all comes under this mapping, so that the children become well aware that whatever affects them health-wise. So they have very clear-cut health issues by doing this mapping. And the disability concerns And where there is high level chemical pollution in the water and in the soil and all, even children, those who are being conceived, there is a high chance of these children getting disabilities, getting affected in their growth in the womb itself. So this all very well connected with this type of mappings. And they are connected with the environmental mapping, which we will be talking about later. I mean the next one. The environmental mapping, the pollution level, the causes of pollutions in the villages. And it could be a soil pollution, or it could be a water pollution, or it could be a air pollution. You know, they're very clear about it when they come to, and they are connected with the health issues, health mapping. And, you know, we saw children become well aware of all these things when they are children themselves, and their children itself, by doing, by these mapping themselves, you know, by participating in a group. Then we have environmental mapping, as I said, that's connected with the environmental aspects, the positive aspects in every village, you know, the forest, the trees, and all that. Then the negative aspect, pollution causing factors, mapping all those things, data collections, and what type of pollution is there. For example, if the soil is polluted, what is the type of pollution it is there? And if the air is polluted, what is the type of pollution and how it is caused? Then water and all that. You know, they learn a lot. Instead of, you know, reading a book and learning, and they learn through this mapping process in a very high way and in a high level. And the more they are into it, they become part of it, and the whole system becomes part of them, that, you know, they can respond to that situation in a better way. And then we have mapping of the water bodies. When we say water bodies, natural water bodies which are existing in the neighborhood or in the village, or man-made lake or ponds, whatever it is, in the whole vicinity of the village. You know, it is very much connected with various other things, you know. So they do that mapping. Then finally, we have a wonderful mapping, dream mapping. This dream mapping is, now after having all these mappings, now they know what is existing. Now they have to prepare a dream mapping. In another 5 years' time, how my village has to be. They have to dream for the village. Or in another 10 years' time, how this has to be, my village has to be, or my neighborhood has to be. What are the things which has to be there? What are the things should not, whichever is existing today, should not be there? You know, it's a dream mapping. It's wonderful practices. It makes the children involve, respond to the situation in that community to bring that dream to reality. For example, when we say certain things which causes pollution, in the dream mapping, they will say this will not be there in 5 years' time in our neighborhood. This pollution causing factors, whatever it is. And I used to ask this when I teach this, even to the animators as well as the children. Should there be a police station in your village? Some will say yes. I would say this, no. Why we need a police station in a village? Which means there are crimes in the village. That's why they need police station. So even if there is a police station now existing, in your dream mapping, you'll have to see that there will not be any police station in the future, in 5 years' time. So that means that village becomes crime-free, 100% crime-free village. When there is no crime at all, then police station has to close and they will vacate from there. There is no crime at all. So when we teach the children this way, it's it gets into their head, you know, and they will say, yeah, if there is no police station now, we will ensure there will be no police station permanently in our village, so that, you know, these crime factors will never happen. Hatred, violence, killing, hitting, fights will never happen. Stealing, you know, so that all these things are quite interesting. And other factors which have to be in the dream mapping, like primary health center or sub center, or school, at least a primary school if it is a small village or whatever it is. So they have to ensure all these things in the dream mapping if they don't have now. Now, another activity in the PLA process is data collection. There are so many data to be collected in the villages about the people, about the animals, about the flora and fauna. And when we talk about people age-wise, elders, adults, youth, and children, and gender-wise, men and women, girls and boys, and third genders, and all that. Then their occupation, already we have seen that occupational and income, this thing, literacy, and all this comes in the data, so that the children become aware, fully aware of their neighborhood or the village in full sense. And you ask any child of any data of this, they have it. And they will be able to say, in our village areas, these are the number of trees we have. These are the type of trees we have. When they have the data, it is wonderful. And which means, for example, for so many population, so much of population, we need so many, minimum so many trees existing always, so that the village gets a good natural oxygen level. So this all very much connected. So these learnings, it's not only, you know, for data, but it teaches them much more, and which is not otherwise taught in any of the syllabuses. In the syllabuses, they will have a general information, you know, trees produce oxygen. Yes, they will know that. But in my village, how many trees are there? And there are various type of trees producing various level of oxygen level, and absorbing various level carbon dioxide or pollution. So that knowledge is given to the children through these practices. So data collection, it's not only about the human beings, people, but flora and fauna, the animals, the birds, and all that. So that they're very well versed with all those things. Usually in the villages it happens, but in the city areas, it may be the children, they are so busy with so many things, because in the villages, children are more connected with the nature, their environment and all that. But in the city, it is not like that. They are always in the closed rooms of the house or the school. So they need to come out to see in the neighborhood, in that area, with all those things. You know, this data can be taken even in the cities, and it has to be taken in the cities, so that, you know, the trees are planted well, and the animals in the neighborhoods are taken care by the community and all that. And data collection process is a very interesting process, and children enjoy that. Children enjoy it to a very high level. Then we have another exercise, and we call it timeline and trend line. But to make them understand better, we also use this term, calling it studying the history of the village. Why should the children study the history of the village? It's very much needed. It's very much needed. Only when the children learn the history of the village, they connect themselves with the village. They start loving that village. It's very, very important. They have to get connected with the village. They have to love the village. You know, when they have all these mappings, they will know, I need not go to the city for my livelihood. There is enough livelihood in my own village. They will know that. They will learn that. They have to learn that. And nowadays, you know, people all from the villages getting migrating to the cities, and from cities people migrating to various other states and migrating to various countries for livelihood. Is it needed? If you go deep into that, it is not needed. And especially in India, we have lots and lots and lots of resource. If the children are taught properly to make use of these resources in India itself, they need not go to the foreign countries in search of job. And they can have their enough income here itself, decent income. And this has to be taught. And to study the history of the village is very, very important. It starts with that, of the name of the village. Each village has got a name. The children should know the meaning of the name. And when the village was established, when the village started getting established, who was the first man to create a village there? It is not the village, you know, just all of a sudden it came up like that. Somebody must have come from somewhere and got settled here. And who was that man? Perhaps people would have forgotten. And the children can go to the old people, the elderly people in the village, try to learn from them, at least to the maximum level possible, who started this village, when it was started, how many years back, and who was this man, from where did he come, why he started the village here, not about 2 kilometers away from here. There should have been some reason to start a particular village in that at that particular time. So they learn all that. And who gave the name of the village? For example, we will say a name, Kolachal. Kolachal is a village. Who gave the name Kolachal? And what is the meaning of Kolachal? There should be some meaning. Without no meaning, there cannot be a name given to. There should be a meaning, there should be a purpose. And who gave the name and all that? And who were the first settlers? And this makes the children love their village, connect with the village very deeply. It's very, very, very important. If they start loving the village and connecting with the village, they will not like to go out of the village in search of livelihood in future. They will say, we will create our own livelihood here. And that's what Abdul Kalam was talking about. You know, reverse migration has to take place, because there are not enough opportunities in the villages for livelihood, for other infrastructural thing, whatever the cities have. He said, no, every village has to have all the facilities and infrastructure and livelihood programs what the cities have, so that migration will not take place. Migration from the villages to the city do not take place. Now, the reverse migration has to take place, and that's why he started it was his pet project. That project is called Purano. When he was president, he proposed this, which is very important. And this is very much connected with this studying the history of the village. And when was the first wristwatch bought in the village, and who was the person who bought the wristwatch? It's a history of the village. Who was the first man to buy a cycle in the village? Who was the first man to buy a bike? Who was the first person to buy a car? Who was the first person to buy a television? Who was the first person to buy the radio? When was the first time the road was made and the transport was introduced in the village? When was the first time the electric connection was given in the village? And who was the first house to have the electric connection? This is all history of the village. Who was the first teacher? Who in the village? Who was the first graduate? Who was the first highest educated person? Who was the first defense force personnel in the village? Who was the first elected panchayat president or a ward member? This is all history of the village. And there are so many things connected to this, because when we have all this, recorded, when the children prepare their own records, collecting all these data, they, as I said, I don't want to repeat that once again, but they feel aghast. They say, oh, fantastic. My village is a very great village. Fantastic village. And every village has something to contribute to the whole country. For example, my own village, it has contributed, the highest number of defense personnel in my district. From my village, the highest number of people who have joined the defense forces are from my village. The highest number of teachers in my districts are from my village. These are all the contribution the village has given to the country. So, what is the contribution which my village has given to the country? It may be in art and culture. There are certain villages where a particular type of sari is manufactured. Only there it is manufactured. Handloom saris, a particular type of, we call it Sungdi sari or something. So we have one nearby town in Ramna district where that particular sari is made only there, nowhere else in the world. So this is a particular contribution to the world, a particular art form. For example, this puppet shows with this leathers and that and this, or some, some art form, or some particular music is being created by that particular village. So these are the things the village has contributed to the whole country and the whole culture and the whole world, to say. So what my village has contributed to the country and the world, these all data has to be collected by the children. And this is done by this PLA tool. And when they collect all these data, imagine how strengthened the children will be. Their all idea about the village, perspective about their own village will change. They will start thinking, oh, my village is a heaven, a paradise. So this all has to be done by our children in the Children Parliament. Then we have SWOT analysis. It's again done by the group. It's under this tool, Participatory Learning Activities tools. And most of us know what is SWOT analysis. SWOT analysis nowadays is called as SWOT analysis. The last, see, it is SWOT. S stands for strength, W stands for weakness, and the O stands for opportunity, and the T stands for threat. But in the later period, about in past 1 or 2 years, the T, threat, is changed into challenges. SWOG. It is called SWOG in the revised analytical field. So they call it SWOG. So the child learns this. First, as an individual, it learns. Me, the child applies this particular method to self. What is my strength as an individual? What is my weakness? What are the opportunities I have? And what are the challenges I have? So the child is taught this tool to analyze self first. So every child goes through this. When the child goes through, the child is very clear about self. Now it is connected with our life skill programs like personality development, self-esteem. When it comes to that, we will be seeing in elaborate how this particular tool is utilized. And not only in self, it can be applied in their families. The strength of the family, weakness of the family, and opportunity of the family, and the challenges of the family. Then it can be applied in the school, in the classroom. The strength of the school, weakness of the school, opportunities of the school, threat of the school. Then it can be applied in the neighborhood, to study the neighborhood, the strength of the neighborhood, the weakness of the neighborhood, the opportunity of the neighborhood, and the challenges of the neighborhood. And the same thing can be applied in the village, and the same thing can be applied for the district, for the state, for the country, and for the whole world. And it's one of the best analytical process which has to be taught to the children in the children parliament, not only for the children parliament children, but which we do it has to be taught in the school as a tool. And it's a fantastic, transformative process. This is a foundation for any transformation, either a personal transformation or a social transformation or a transformation of a particular group or whatever it is, of even organizations. So children parliament go through this. Then there is another practice in parliament, participated learning activities, that is called plans. When we talk about planning, there are 3 types of planning. It is very much connected with goal setting. In the life skill program, we will be seeing about goal setting. And this is connected with that. This training is given. That is short-term goal, short-term plan, and medium-term plan, and long-term plan. In other words, we can say the life goal, then medium-term goal, then short-term goal. And every child has to go through that, preparing this process. It can be done in the group to be more effective. So when they do it in a group, they consult with each other, discuss with each other, and they come with the best practices. And really it is very, very important. Very, very, very important. And how to go through this process? It's a very, very interesting process. It may take more time, because when we have all these topics in this mapping process and data collection process, each topic itself takes some time to teach them. I'm giving you only some introduction of the topics and little background, that's all. But otherwise, in an elaborate training, you have to go still more deeper into it. And the next one is we have preparing timetables. It's fantastic process. The children have to prepare their own timetable, individual timetable and timetable as a group, but more importantly, the individual timetable. is very, very important. They have to prepare their own timetable. And this preparing timetable makes the child abide by the timetable which is prepared. For example, at what time I will be getting up. So timetable will be for working days and for non-working days. There should be two type of timetable. Working days means the school days and the others is for the holidays. So school days, at what time I get up. They fix the time. Now, most of the time, what parents, fix the time for the students, I mean for the children. You have to get up by this time. When a timetable is set by the parents, it doesn't go well with the children. Now 6 o'clock, get up. They'll say, "Mummy, 5 minutes, mummy." Always the children feel bit difficult to get up in that particular time. But when the children fix the time of getting up, they themselves fix, then they're very honest to that. They very genuinely follow that. And they will ask their parents, please wake me up by this time. And it's wonderful. And which time they have to get ready and which time they set for writing the homework, preparing the homework and leaving for the school. And after coming back, their timetable. Till they go to bed. What is my time for my housework? For the house, the child has to contribute. Like going to the shop, buying that, this, or cleaning the house, or setting the whole things, in proper places and all that, or washing the clothes. For that, the child has to set some time doing the housework, household work. Then the child has to set a time for playing games, outdoor games, indoor games. The child has to set a time for that. So when the child itself says, okay, from 4:30 to 5 o'clock, my time is to play outdoor games. They're very particular about it, and we cannot disturb them at that time. Once they fix the timetable, parents cannot disturb them. They cannot say, no, you go and sit and study. No, the children, they have set their own time to study. From 6 to 7:30, my study time. At that time, don't disturb them to go send them to the shop to buy that and this, to do some other work. No, the children prepare the timetable. And I remember in some of the children parliaments, they have done it wonderfully. And I used to ask them, how do your parents feel about your timetable? So after we prepare the timetable, we inform our parents, this is what I have prepared. And sometimes our parents correct little bit here and there. And we accept. Once it is finalized, then we make copies of this. One will be in our bedroom, one will be in our living room, and one will be in other places, wherever it has to be, where our parents also keep on seeing it, so that the whole family becomes attuned to that timetable prepared by the children. How wonderful it is. So the children learn. It is more connected with our time management in the life skill, but they learn to respect time, to not to waste time, but to spend the time fruitfully. And they take the responsibility of preparing the timetable. How wonderful it will be. Then finally, budgeting. Budgeting also has to be done by the children. They can do their personal budgeting, parliament budgeting, budgeting for the family. How wonderful it will be. They will be well aware of the source of income, the amount of income, and the way it has to be spent properly. So these are all the topics we have for them to learn in the participatory learning and actions. And when they prepare, when they involve in this in a very systematic way, they become very attached to that. They become more inclined to love that, to accept that, and they follow it very, very, very honestly. If you tell them you don't do this or do that or something like that, if the adults tell them, they get disturbed. Oh, come on, daddy. Every time you are nagging me, doing this for not doing that, or oh, come on. But if they fix, if they decide, it's wonderful. And they follow it very honestly. So this is what I wanted to share today about participatory learning activities.